find yourself with one foot inside the church, the other foot outside the church. Maybe you're unstable and double minded in all your ways. Or maybe you're living a secret life and you're tired of wearing that mask. Are you lost, but you don't know how to get your life back on track? The good news is that Jesus Christ is always willing to help us, but we must ask him. He's not going to force himself into our lives. That's a decision that we'll have to make to ask him for help. Whether you know it or not, we all were created in the likeness and image of God. And until we know exactly who we are and come into our God-given identities, our life will never be all that it can be. Join me as we watch today's episode with our guest, Daniel Williams, titled The Mistaken Identity. I hope you enjoy. I want to thank you, Daniel, for agreeing to be on the show with us today. How's everything going with you?
Everything's well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Now, we're going to go ahead and get into your story. But before we do that, I want to just ask you a question. What was going on with you at that moment when you found yourself just not knowing who you were in Christ? What were you dealing with at that moment in your life?
At that moment, I was dealing with a whole lot of issues. I was married at the time. I was a father. I was really displaced.
Okay.
I was like two different people.
Right.
I presented one face during the week, and I had another when the weekend came around.
Right.
So it was a real confusing place for me.
Right. So tell us a little bit about that. Just what you were going through. Go ahead and get into your testimony for us.
Well, like I said, I wore like two faces. So I was the presentable, upstanding guy. I was Daniel through the work week. Everyone knew me as Daniel. That's the name that I went with. And then those that knew me on the weekend, they knew me by my middle name is Jermaine.
Right.
Because I turned into another person. And the thing that kind of really made me think about how I got into that situation of losing control was when my mother came by one of my part-time jobs. She would come by on a Friday night to see me. And she said she came to see her son, Jermaine, before I turned into this other Jermaine.
Okay, so she was aware of everything.
Yeah, she was real strong in Christ, and she said she could see a spirit that would come over me when it came close to the weekend, because it left from being like just fun, having fun, and just hanging out, and it turned into a burden for me, something I couldn't pull myself from not doing anymore.
All right. So what type of things did you find yourself doing just in that moment in your life? Like, how crazy did it get?
Oh, it went from real crazy. I'd say it kind of started like in high school. I kind of can do it from there and jump it.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
You know, high school, everybody, you kind of curious about drinking and stuff like that. And so I used to drink, and I could really, I guess I had a high tolerance. So I drank before I realized I was drunk, and I would be passing out. It started then. I never really thought anything. I thought that was just something that happened to you, but it wasn't something that was good. And but I was a pretty good guy up until I graduated. When I graduated, I got into my first bit of serious trouble, like not long after graduation. I ended up actually having to look at like 10 years in prison if charges were to get pressed on me. I was involved in a shooting.
Okay.
I won't go too far into that, but God bless, I didn't have to do any time with that thing, but life kept going on. I kept finding myself in a crowd that wasn't the environment my mother raised me in. I didn't have a struggling childhood or anything like that.
Right.
I found myself being more and more pulled out into a street world. If you want to say that. I got my father put me out.
Yeah.
The same put me out because I was out one night. I was kind of dabbling in I was really dabbling in the streets. I got in a car with some addicts. And they tried to rob me. and I wouldn't give up my money, and I wouldn't give up my drugs.
Right.
They held me at, it was a lady held me at knife point in the back seat, and a guy had a gun pointed at my head from the front seat. Because I wouldn't give it up, they threw me out of the car. It was going like 35 miles per hour, so I had Oxford burns on my arms and everything. My mother took care of me that night when I came in, but my father, he was like, I couldn't stay there any longer if I was going to be behaving like that. So I stayed in a hotel for a few months, which really kind of put me in the elements of things. So I didn't stop what I was doing.
Right.
Despite that, I kept on going.
Right.
And I kept going with it. You know, I still worked. I worked a job. So like I was saying, I presented those two faces. I still worked a job, and I was dabbling in that at the same time too, because it was kind of interesting and kind of exciting to me. And because I thought I had a balance on it. And I maintained it all the way until I started having my children. I got married. And then how it got out of control was I never stopped. It left from being, it used to be fun, or I use it as an excuse. I was young when I got in and I was just interested in whatnot, but I never dropped it.
Right.
I went from just drinking to, I started smoking weed. Said I'd never do anything harder than that.
Right.
Till I snorted my first lines of cocaine. So it did me, it wasn't what I thought it would be. It didn't take me someplace crazy, so I kept on doing it. And you know, the amounts kept getting larger and larger that I used. And so from that, it started interfering with my work. Yeah. Because it turned out to stop being just a weekend thing. And then I started drinking and smoking and doing coke with some friends or some guys. Right. One night during the week, then it'll end up turning to an all night thing. Right. I'd be late for work or so tired at work, and it affected my family, so it affected my kids, it affected my marriage. Then it got to the point I stopped coming home on the weekends and found myself just hanging out anywhere. Right. Just because I was out, and it got me chasing that drug, and I was like, whoa. Right. Man, you turned into a druggie or something. Right.
So at that moment, do you think that you were just addicted, or was there something deeper that you were trying to feel at that point in your life where you found yourself constantly, dealing with the drug?
Yeah, I don't think somebody would say it was an addiction, but I didn't crave it like through the week or anything like that. I just did it because, I was hanging out. Okay. And it was more of I always had a displacement, I felt. Like I didn't belong in groups or in certain groups. Right. People at work, I mean, I was comfortable with them, but then I still felt kind of uncomfortable. And even the people that I just hung around with for hanging out, it was still something different. I just always had a void in my spirit and everything. It was just like something was missing always. Right. It was one thing because I never knew my biological father. Okay. My mother was real young when she had me, and it was basically me and her growing up together. We were more like brother and sister than mother and son. She was like 15 when she had me, so but she met my stepfather, and he was in my life since I was 2 weeks old. But
that's good.
At the same time, it was a man in the house, but he wasn't affectionate or anything like that. I see. So I missed that. I didn't have that affection. I didn't have that being. He was a good provider. Right. I got all of that from him. I got that strong stuff that we normally supposed to teach. Right. Teach our guys, our boys, the being men. He was a good provider. All of that, but affectionate and taking time and stuff. He never did that. So I kind of missed that. I felt betrayed because I never knew my real father, and my stepfather, he really didn't give me a whole lot of time like that either. So I think that played a lot in why I felt like something was empty and missing.
Okay. And when was that you found, something to fill that void? Would you say it's when you came into knowledge of Christ? Or like what was that moment for you?
I think it was more me coming back to Christ. I was raised in the church, so
Right,
that's
I remember you said that.
that's a funny thing. So all that I went through, I knew better, and I guess that's why it pulled on me
Right.
so strongly, and it held me so tight once I got involved in it, because I knew Christ. I was a Sunday school teacher, youth leader, all that type of stuff in the church. I mean, I knew the Bible well. I studied a lot, and but just what brought me to it, how my mother prayed on me so much and so hard, and other people, and then it really wasn't until years later I kept battling with it. I tried fighting with it. I would go to church off and on. I would get a word, and I feel like I just drop everything at a time. I just like go a year, whatever, no drinking and stuff like that, hanging out. But I always ended up going back to it.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got back in Charlotte a few years ago, and it's like nothing would go right for me.
Okay.
And I guess that was the real turning point that made me just really like, all right, you know what, I've been trying to do it on my own.
Right. Sick and tired of being tired.
Yeah, I was working 2 jobs, and I was living in my car.
Yeah. Okay.
I was sleeping in the back of a gas station at night.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm in my 40s.
Yeah.
How I end up getting to be like 42, 43 years old.
Right.
I never had a problem with being able to put my money to find a place to stay, but it was running through my hands. And
Yeah.
I was sleeping in my car,
Yeah.
and I had a membership at a gym, so I could take a shower. I had nobody to call. And I asked the Lord I'm like, all right, you know what? I can't do this anymore.
Right.
I'm tired. And I ended up getting pulled. I ended up getting pulled over for a DWI. So I told him to do it, but then I still went, and I went drinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, came back to South Carolina to visit some friends, and ended up drinking. I got pulled over and couldn't get out of jail.
Okay.
It was a first time DUI, so I was supposed to just get out on my own, but they kept me in. I had to stay in there for 21 days. I had a calm though. I had a peace.
Right.
Because it was like, it was either this is what you want,
right,
or you can live like how I want you to live. And I was like, all right, you know what? I choose the latter.
So it gave you that time to think
Yeah,
while you were there.
yeah, it gave me that time to think and really assess all that I did and all that I walked away from. You know, I totaled like 4 or 5 cars.
Yeah.
Walked away from. I've been, a lot of things that I said I would have never been in.
Yeah.
And did, like, I mean, like having them drinking and drug binges. And,
Yeah.
and then just sitting down and just like being gone for a whole weekend, 3 days at a time, no sleep, and hanging out in places with people I didn't even know. Anything could have happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want you to tell us, like, where are you right now in your life?
Now I'm in a peaceful place. I'm at peace. I feel good about where I'm at in life now. I mean, I really turned everything over to the Lord. I can walk around. I don't have any guilt on me. I don't have to worry about trying to be two people.
Right.
When I was walking around with 2 faces, I had to present one face, and I wouldn't get around this one group because I didn't want them to know what I was doing, and I felt like people could see through me,
right,
so I would just avoid them. Yeah.
Right.
And so now, I mean, I can be who I am. I don't have to worry about it. I'm who I am all the time with everybody, everywhere I go.
That's good.
And a lot of dreams and a lot of things that I tried to do during that time, I can now do. My hands, I'm getting the fruits of my labor now.
That's good.
Before, the stuff would kind of just die on the vine.
Right.
So now the Lord's actually, I tell everybody this too. I mean, you can always restart.
Right.
You can always start over. The younger you are, the better it is for you to grab a hold of where you're at and flip it before you make too many mistakes.
Right.
In my case, I said I'm a little older. I went a lot of years with mistakes. God forgave me. God, he saved me from a lot of things. I was supposed to do jail time for stuff.
Right.
I never did. And you still got to pay consequences.
That's true.
For stuff. It may not be as severe, but I was like, before I can really go forward into where I'm supposed to go, there's a lot of mistakes I had to go back and correct first.
Right.
So I had to correct some things before I can really propel forward.
Right. Right.
So I make amends with everybody that I felt like I really did wrong. Apologize to my kids, got a real understanding, because I thought I disappointed them and let them down, and they didn't really love me as much. Apologize to my ex-wife for what I put her through.
Yeah.
And now I can just treat everybody like genuinely like who I really was.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So I thank you, for just coming and sharing your story, and just the importance of just knowing who you are in Christ and just correcting that mistaken identity. And, now since you've done that, like you said, it's just so much more things that God is doing in your life and just through your life. And now, before we go, I just want you to give just words of encouragement just for somebody out there, maybe another young man who may found himself in the same shoes that you were in. Just give him some type of encouragement.
I'll tell you this, and this can pretty much be broad, cover anything. First thing, don't feel like you by yourself in a thing. You're not the only one that's having to deal with whatever situation it is, whether it's something about you feeling lost from your father, your mother, it's something you missing in your family, parental, you're not getting affection or attention, it sounds cliche as God loves you. You can't see it at that moment, but you got to keep praying, searching for him. And there's people who will take interest in you and seeing your better. There's always somebody wants to see your better. Everybody's not against you and saying that you won't be, you can't be, you'll never be. And you don't give in to those thoughts. You don't believe them. And you just keep on going for the better, because you weren't put here to be the worst at anything. So you go for the best in everything, and you'll gravitate towards people that do the same thing, and they'll gravitate towards you. Like, you just got to keep your focus and kind of quiet all that outside noise. It seems tough when you're younger and you're trying to find your way and figure it out, but you just gotta stay in there. And like I said, you keep your focus, and people will gravitate towards you. Gotta send people in your life that'll help you find your direction and speak life into you.
Well, Daniel, I want to thank you for just coming on here, sharing your story. I do thank you, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you all for watching as well, for tuning in to Talking with Trista. Remember, you can catch us every second and fourth Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Facebook. Until next time.